Hey there, it's me again. This is Nevermind the What, a show where I talk to musicians in the New York City area and beyond. Today I have Kirsten Ewart. Kirsten Ewart is a composer who strives to create an experience. She uses musical descriptions of everyday sounds and intense feelings to craft a world, one which she invites the listener to experience alongside her. She also strives to do good in the world by teaching and being a strong role model to others in much the same way that helped inspire her own career. I spoke with Kirsten and got an in-depth view on how she approaches her musical language and life. Hey there, how's it going?
Not bad. And yourself?
Pretty good. Thanks for joining me in this practice room.
Yeah, no worries.
You are from Canada originally?
Yes.
From Saskatchewan?
Saskatchewan, yes.
How did you end up here in New York City?
So I finished my undergraduate degree in 2016, and I moved out to Vancouver.
Right.
And I spent a couple years learning, studying with a composer there, Jocelyn Morlock. And I decided it was time to apply for grad school. And so grad school brought me to New York City.
Gotcha. So how are you enjoying New York so far?
Oh, I love it. It's like there's always a million things to do.
Yeah.
Very different than Saskatchewan in that regard because there was maybe one classical music concert a week where I grew up, and now, there's something
plenty. Yeah.
3 or 4 a night sometimes.
Right.
More even.
Yeah, was Saskatchewan, I'm not familiar, is that a smaller town?
So Saskatchewan is like a province. It's like a state.
Gotcha.
And so then I grew up in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Which has about 30,000 people in it.
Okay, so that's small, I think.
Yeah.
Especially compared to good old New York City.
Yes.
So, for someone who's, unfamiliar with your compositional style, how would you kind of describe it?
Yeah, I have sort of 3 things that I tend to lean towards. Repetition, sort of a minimalistic approach to repetition, and then I love a good romantic melody. And then I also enjoy weird, wacky, wonderful sounds.
Gotcha. What kind of weird, wacky, wonderful sounds
I wrote a piece last term in collaboration with a double bassist, Lindsay Rosenberg, for double bass and doorstop. Just because there was a particular sound on the double bass that sounded to me just like a doorstop.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What sound was that?
When you detune the E string of the double bass, it starts to hit the fingerboard, and it sounds just like when you hit a doorstop.
Gotcha.
So in that case, I went with a little bit of childhood whimsy, and gave a particularly good program note encouraging the audience to think back to their childhood and how much they want to play with doorstops as a kid, and this being sort of a catharsis for them. A bunch of percussive sounds on the double bass mixed with the percussive sound of the doorstop.
Gotcha. Do you use program notes a lot to kind of, not justify your music, but to kind of get the point across?
Sometimes the point just gets across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, because I noticed a piece you wrote recently called Dot.
On the Dot.
On the Dot, sorry. My
Yes.
apologies. On the Dot.
Yeah.
It was written as a reaction to a bird outside your window, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you also find yourself, kind of writing about things in that regard?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
The inspiration kind of hits in different ways, but definitely pre-existing sounds in the world around me are my first source of inspiration.
Gotcha.
In this case, this bird woke me up at 4 a.m. every single morning, at a time when I was working late into the evenings, sometimes 2 a.m. So I'd be asleep for 2 hours, and then this bird would wake me up, and it has this very repetitive 2-note call over and over and over again, constantly for an hour and a half at a time.
Oh boy, that sounds fun.
So I wanted to get rid of the negative feeling of listening to this bird and bring other people into the world of this bird as well.
there any other like real life sounds you use often?
Right now I'm working on a piece for string quartet for the Jack Quartet at the near the end of the semester.
Yeah.
And it's called Toad Road, and it's inspired by toad sounds specifically.
Okay. So it seems like it's kind of a theme of you using little animals and their sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I also have a piece written themed about a cave that I thought was particularly beautiful, and when I saw images of it, I started to hear particular sounds.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you ever write in a more abstracted way, or do you find yourself constantly going back to these images or these sounds or these examples?
Yeah, so once I kind of get a hold of the sound, I do a lot of research, both technical and less technical. For example, a toad sound is not necessarily like a straight up ribbit, as one might assume. It's sort of a low, croaky transformation, and so I had to debate whether I wanted to go with the comical ribbit or the more technical ribbit, and that's kind of always a decision that I make. I transform things until I'm content with sort of a vision I have in my head.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in your bass piece a second ago that you invited the audience to have like this childlike wonder. I forgot what you said exactly. But so do you think that kind of lightheartedness is part of your compositional style, or is it something you just kind of touch on here and there?
Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes I take on pretty heavy topics as well, involving mental health. I wrote another piece this summer, specifically exploring some of the emotions that I had from childhood that were fairly dark in nature. But it was to encourage the audience to go to a place that they might not normally go. Gotcha. So in the case of toads, you might not normally be at a pond late at night and hear the sounds of toads. You might not be able to go to visit a cave in Mexico. You might not be able to lay in bed beside me and hear a crazy bird first thing in the morning. But I'm going to take you to that place with my music.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the connective tissue. It seems
that
like
is,
you like creating worlds and bringing people into them.
Yes, definitely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I also know in addition to writing, you teach.
I do.
Yeah, where do you teach at?
The East Vancouver Community Music School.
You teach composition?
Yes, and oboe.
Composition and oboe. Okay. Do you think it's important for composers to be educators as well?
Not every composer makes a good educator.
Right.
But I think being realistic about your position in the world is important. So if you're in this position where you have young children listening to your music or younger people listening to your music, you're bound to find one or two of them that find your music incredible and want to learn from you. And so I think it's important for all composers to explore teaching a little bit. And then, of course, for me, I became inspired to become a composer because I saw a female composer role model. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized, oh, I could pursue a career as a composer.
Right.
And so for me, educating a younger generation means that I can go and say, hey, you can do this too, and start them off earlier than I started, which was 2022.
Gotcha.
When I started.
So maybe less so important to be an educator, but you think it's important for them to be good role models, composers?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was the composer that you saw?
Yeah, Nicole Lizet.
Okay.
She had this piece for piano, electronics, and video called the Hitchcock Etudes.
Oh.
And it was being toured by Canadian pianist Megumi Misaki. And I went and I sat at the concert and I read the biography of Nicole Lizet, who I'd never heard of before in my life. And she was a female composer who was born and raised in Estevan, Saskatchewan, or around Estevan, Saskatchewan.
Okay, so not only she's also a woman. She's also from the same part of the world you are.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a mind-blowing moment.
Yeah.
Where I realized, wow, there are women writing music, and they're living women writing music.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the tunes that I sing to myself, I can notate and do
share,
something
yeah.
with. Yeah.
Well, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Kirsten, for joining me. Nevermind the What is a show sponsored by Nevermind the Noise Composer Collective, which is a group of student composers here at NYU. If you want to stay up to date with what we have going on, our social medias will be here on the screen as well as down below in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Stop looking at me like that.
Like what?
So you brought a gift item from home.
Yeah, just a book. I love to read a lot.
Nice. What book is it?
Why would you ask me that question?
No.
Oh God. Oh God.
All right.
I don't know the
We'll
author's
skip,
name.
We'll skip that.
I don't know the author's name.